And we saw over the course of this time that more and more and more and more of our clients were asking about quote unquote Black Paris. Fewer and fewer were asking about Paris in general. And we also noticed that people could no longer sort of bear the thought of doing a self-guided itinerary. In other words, it was too much work to tell us what they wanted to see so that we could put the itinerary together. And we started to get these emails. Could you just take us such and such a place? You know, we want to see this. Can you just take us there? So when we figured out that that really was not going to go away, we rebranded to Entrée de Black Paris Tours, and we started doing guided walks and activities. So for both types of business, what I felt was important was to know the area where we were going to take our clients. That meant learning about the history of the areas. And this slide is labeled geographical spaces. So we're talking about the geography of Paris. We started out with 4 self-guided walking tours in different areas of Paris, talking about different eras of African-American history here. So I felt that what I needed to do was to go into these areas and walk the streets. That's why you see here a map. And because we're talking about artists in the context of Paris Noir, I did, when I first created the walking tours, there was a walking tour that I created that was specifically about African-American artists in Paris. And it took place, it unfolded in the Montparnasse area, which is historically an artist area. So you see the caption on the map says, Paris 14th arrondissement dans les années 50-60. Those are the 2 decades that Paris Noir is, 2 of the first decades that Paris Noir is dealing with here. Once I got a feel for the space and what had happened in this space historically, I needed to then add the physical places where the African American artists had lived, had worked, had socialized. So what you see here are photographs of 3 African American artists who came to Paris in the 20th century. Beauford Delaney, he's my man, in his studio at Rue Saint-Vergétorix, Rue Saint-Vergétorix, Ed Clark, in the courtyard of his studio, Rue de l'Ombre, and Barbara Chase Ribou in her studio on Rue Juteau. Okay, so I know the lay of the land. I am able to start to craft a story, and I'm putting these physical places into the landscape. Here are a couple of others. These are the cafes mentioned specifically multiple times by Herb Gentry in an oral history that he gave. The Coupole, he talked about seeing Alberto Giacometti go to the Coupole at 10:30 every night for dinner. And he was able to engage with the artists there. We have the Select, which is where Ed Clark hung out a lot and where Beauford Delaney hung out a lot as well. I could tell you all kinds of stories. These are just 2 of the physical spaces in Montparnasse that are relevant to African American artists. And we have physical places. The Gallery Wright was mentioned a couple of times during the colloquium. This is not in Montparnasse. This is very near Notre Dame Cathedral, as you can see. But this is an avant-garde gallery space where white and Black American artists came together to work and to show their work. And you have the larger photograph is a sort of an aerial view of the American Center for Students and Artists, which is now the space occupied by the Fondation Cartier. This is in Montparnasse. Another 2 spaces that I don't have photos that I'll to show you would be the American Cultural Center, Rue du Dragon, and the Cité Internationale des Arts, which is on the Quai Hôtel de Ville. So the walk that I originally created, Montparnasse, the Artist's World, takes place along the avenue, the Boulevard du Montparnasse on both sides. So the north side would be the 6th arrondissement, the south side the 14th. What you see here is a mural that is on the wall of a theater, well, the building in which a theater is located on Rue La Gaîté in Montparnasse. And on this walking tour, I introduce our clients to several artists. Some of the people pictured on this slide are not of the era of the Paris Noir exhibition, but they are precursors, if you will, or they set the stage for the people who came to Paris from 1950 on. So the two larger photos, Meetable Warwick Fuller, a sculptor who was a mentor of Lois Mailou Jones, who you see in the lower left for me, so it's probably the lower right for you. Henry Osawa Tanner, who was the sort of grandfather of all the African-American artists who came to Paris. He got here actually at the end of the 19th century, and he lived in Montparnasse. And there is a story about Henry Osawa Tanner and Meetable Warwick Fuller that has to do with Columbia Global, where the building where Columbia Global Center's Reed Hall is currently located. I should say Columbia Global Centers is currently located. The building has been Reed Hall since the beginning. We have Herb Gentry, who had a studio in Montparnasse, and also he and his first wife, Honey Johnson, had a space called Chez Honey where they showed art during the day and they had jazz at night. We have Archibald Motley, predates 1950, but he stayed in Montparnasse for a good year at the Hotel Istria. And Lois Mailou Jones, of course, who had a magnificent studio on the Rue Campagne Première. And Beauford Delaney is very much implicated in the Montparnasse, the Artist World's Walk. But you have, because I wanted to reiterate that there are other spaces that African American artists frequented, I have him here in the heart of the American Cultural Center, which was off of Boulevard Saint-Germain. And you see him here at an event that was organized to honor him. And his artwork is on the wall. The place is packed. And you see Beauford standing up, acknowledging someone, probably Dorothea Spire, or whoever. I think Dorothea had actually left by that time, but the people who had organized this for him. So that brings me to Les Amis de Beauford Delaney, which is the French nonprofit organization that I founded in 2009. I founded this organization to place a stone at Beauford Delaney's previously unmarked grave at TA Cemetery. And I started to blog about Beauford to raise awareness of this problem, and to raise awareness of his story, to let people know that he was buried in an unmarked grave in a cemetery outside of Paris. And there's a whole story behind that we don't have time to go into. But I started to blog about him, and the organization is called Les Amis de Beauford Delaney because it was friends of his who alerted me to the fact that he was in this cemetery, and they wanted to know if his grave was still intact. I found out about him in 2009. Mind you, Beauford died in 1979. So his friends were concerned that he might have been exhumed. And I, not knowing this history, this sort of custom, was shocked to hear that he might not be there. And the story goes on. In any event, we were successful at raising the money to lay a stone. We did that in less than a year. And this blog that I thought was sort of finished, I had accomplished my goal. I stopped blogging about Beauford. The blog is called Les Amis de Beauford Delaney, by the way. I put the blog down. hey, I've done this thing, helped preserve a bit of African American history in Paris, and I'm going to go on to do something else now. And Beauford said, no, not done with you yet. I picked up the blog again. I learned everything that I possibly could about his life in Paris and his life before Paris. So if you go backwards, he came to Paris from New York. He came to New York from Boston, and he came to Boston from Knoxville, his hometown. After I finished, well, I should say, I thought that I had exhausted my subject matter in terms of this man's history. And I thought to myself, well, Beauford Delaney was an artist. Maybe I should look at his art. And started really because I'm not an art person, so to speak, just started to very methodically say, well, where could you find Beauford Delaney's art? Where can you find it in Paris? Where can you find it in the northeast of the United States, the South, et cetera, et cetera. And in looking up his work and seeing an image of a painting called Composition 16, which is now at MoMA, I felt like I was going to have a heart attack, and realized in that moment that I needed to re-examine Beauford Delaney through the lens of his art. And that led to the founding of the Wells International Foundation, which is a U.S. public charity domiciled in Houston, Texas, which is my hometown. It is a 501c3, and I founded this organization to raise the money to do a show of original Beauford Delaney works. And that show took place at Columbia Global Centers in Reed Hall. So here we have a photograph of Reed Hall. This is a very idyllic place. Hopefully some of you got to go to the sort of pre-opening event. The first pre-opening event for the Paris Noir exhibition took place at Reed Hall on Sunday. Some people say this, the Sunday that's closest to this one. Yes, 5 days ago, thank you. Yes, and it was a very, very, very stimulating conversation that was had about the whole question of Paris Noir. What is it, why do we need it, etc. Beauford Delaney, I believe, actually went to Reed Hall. There is an invitation that you see, a photograph of an invitation that was found in his archive for a concert that was held at Reed Hall on the 9th of April, 1973. It was a classical music concert. Beauford loved all kinds of music, including classical. And while we have no proof that he actually went to this concert, we do know that he cared enough to hold on to this invitation. So Reed Hall is a special place, not only because of the show that we did there. We also did a reading of a play that was written, a biographical play that was written by him at Reed Hall. We also feel that he actually could have at least physically been in the space. And of course, that's a stop on the Montparnasse tour. The show that we did was called Resonance of Form and Vibration of Color. We held it in February and March 2016. It was a 6-week show. The curator is Laurence Chocot, who is on this panel. And you can see Laurence here in front of a group of people. You can see the Grande Salle of Columbia Global Centers at Reed Hall with all original works, oils, and works on paper. And Laurence is in front of a group of people who are participating in a private tour. She's warming them up before she takes them around the exhibition. And then this is the other room where the exhibition was held. This is the Salle de Conférence at Reed Hall. Just like we're having lots of events and discussions around Paris Noir, I organized several such events and discussions around resonance of form and vibration of color. And one of the things that I did was create a new walking tour called Beauford Delaney's Montparnasse. And what you see here is a group of people who I affectionately call the Knoxville 11. 11 people from Knoxville, Tennessee, which is Beauford's hometown, came to Paris to see this show, and you see them at the beginning point of the Beauford Delaney's Montparnasse walk. There are 2 plaques that honor Beauford Delaney in Montparnasse. It was the French nonprofit's work that got those installed. This one is at the Hotel Le M on Rue La Gaîté. The plaque says, Beauford Delaney, portraitist and abstract expressionist painter, born in Knoxville, Tennessee, USA, frequented the restaurant Les Mille Colonnes at this address in the years 1950 to 1970. So this address was it was originally a theater. It became a cinema. Right now it is a beautiful hotel. And Beauford ate at this restaurant, Les Mille Colonnes, many, many, many times. The other plaque is at the Hotel Odessa, the Odessa Hotel on Rue d'Odessa in Montparnasse. The plaque simply says, Beauford Delaney, portraitist and abstract expressionist painter, born in Knoxville, Tennessee, USA, lived at this address in 1953. This was the second address that Beauford had in Paris. He was only here a few days. We don't know how long. I don't even think he was there a week before he moved into the Hotel des Écoles, which was his first true studio. If you go to this hotel right now, you will find another plaque beneath the Beauford Delaney plaque that honors Fujita. And fast forward to 2024. Well, let's see. Let's backtrack up just a couple of years. The University of Tennessee, Knoxville acquires the Beauford Delaney archive and is working to this day to categorize it, digitize it, etc. And in 2025, in September of this year, they are going to have an exhibition on the Beauford Delaney archive. And I've been asked to consult on the categorization, identifying papers and people and pictures and things like that. This picture here is one that you will find in the archive. James Baldwin, Beauford Delaney, and James Baldwin's friend and lover, Lucien Happersberger, walking down Boulevard Saint-Germain. And this photograph comes from the David Leeming biography of James Baldwin. And Leeming says that this photo was taken in 1953. So I decided, the University of Tennessee Libraries sent 4 people to Paris last summer to walk the streets of Beauford Delaney. And I created the Beauford Delaney and Saint-Germain-des-Prés walk for that occasion. And right here, you can see 2 of the 4 women who came from Knoxville. Katrina Stack is the shorter person on my left, your right. And she's a graduate student in the geography department, geography and sustainability at University of Tennessee. And she is the graduate student who is working on this project. And to her right, you see Holly Mercer, who is actually the dean of University of Tennessee Libraries. And they